Okay, guys, good day, everyone. So, we are the reporter of the chapter 5. I am Risa Santino, and my partner for today's report is Angelic Miss Maghanay. So, we are both assigned for the chapter 5, which talks about practicality and efficiency. So, back from our previous lessons and chapters, we've already discussed about the essence of assessment, how does the assessment plays a vital role in such an integration of a classroom situation. We also discuss about the different tests. We have the intelligence test, aptitude test, and a lot more. We also discuss about the reliability that talks about the calculation, statistical analysis, and we also talk about the series of information about the placement assessment, formative assessment, and a lot more assessment. And those previous lessons are actually intertwined, or there is actually the interconnectedness between chapter 1 to 4 in this chapter 5, which is the practicality and efficiency. So this practicality and efficiency talks about the essence of assessment, how also assessment plays a vital role in practicality and efficiency. Efficiency, we've also focused and concentrates more on a teacher directed and a learner centered relationships. So I am going to read the overview of our chapter. So here, on top of planning, developing and organizing instruction and managing student conduct, teachers also have the task of assessing student learning. So this practically means that the learners are not just given or bestowed a responsibility in learning, but also vice versa. The teacher also has a responsibility or held responsible in the child's learning process. So it says here that the time and resources present themselves as issues. So for these reasons, classroom testing should be teacher friendly. Of course, we should really implement differentiated instruction that makes a classroom a teacher friendly or even a learner friendly. And then test development and grading should be practical and efficient. So we are going to discuss about the acing scoring, the time needed, and we also discuss about the methods that is essential in a classroom, or that is essential for your methods in integrating such information towards your students. And also practical means it is useful, of course. So it can be used to improve classroom instruction and for outcomes assessment purposes. So this practicality and efficiency is actually useful for the teachers in order for them to distinguish what methods or what appropriate assessment that they could give towards the students, and what are the bases, what are the justifications why they are using this or why they are utilizing this kind of method. And then we also have this. It likewise pertains to judicious use of classroom time. So efficient in this context pertains to development, administration, and grading of assessment with the least waste of resources and effort. So in this chapter, we will cover factors and practicality and efficiency that contribute to high quality assessment. So we all know that every institution or even the Department of Education is really aiming for a quality education that really leaves a note or leaves a benchmark towards the students. So these include teacher familiarity with the method, that is the first one. The next one is the time required, complexity of administration, ease of scoring, ease of interpretation, and the last one is the cost. So these six factors on practicality and efficiency is based from the research of Macmillan 2007. So these factors would have considered and balanced with previously discussed principles. So as what I have said earlier, that this chapter 5, practicality and efficiency is actually intertwined with the previous chapters. So first factor is the familiarity with the method. So and before I will read the next slide, I will base first my explanation here in the given textbook. So, familiarity with the method, I'm sorry for that. So, while it is the best, teachers utilize various methods of assessments. Of course, we all know this in the chapter 1 because there are actually tons of different tests We have the intelligence test, aptitude test, and a lot more, right? We also have the aptitude test, and that very distinct tests actually has different purposes. They vary or they are indistinct. They play differently. So it would be a waste of time and resources if the teacher is unfamiliar with the method of assessment. So as a teacher, as a future educator, we really need to know, we really need to infer the proper assessment or the proper or appropriate method that we are going to integrate in a classroom situation in order to be an effective teacher and in order for the students to learn it effectively. And then the teacher may commit mistakes in the construct or format of the assessment if dili kabisado ang teacher sa yung method nga gigamit. So that is the con. Consequently, the results would not be credible. So if a teacher failed to use that kind of method, of course, every information that may come from her or his mouth will not be reliable anymore towards his students, because the method that he or she utilized in that certain situation is not even credible or reliable. Am I right? So yeah, it must be credible. You must know your proper assessment, and most especially you must familiarize the method that you are integrating. So any inference arising from the assessment results would not be valid or reliable. So this may be a problem for some teachers who had been accustomed to pencil and paper tests. So as pointed out in chapter 3, some learning targets are best achieved using non-tests. So a rule of thumb is that simple learning targets require simple assessment. Complex learning targets demand complex assessment. So here, teachers should be familiar with assessment. So when we talk about assessment, it really is broad, but this plays a vital role as a teacher, because it knowing the assessment results, results would actually lead you to formulate laws. Now we have this perfect example, which is the I forgot the law, but I have read it in chapter 1. Wait a minute. Asa naman to? Asa naman to ang kuan? Just wait a minute. Yes, there. Assessment results, no? So teachers should be familiar with the assessment, because assessment result is actually serving a justification for formulation or establishing a new laws. So a current example is the Republic Act 10533, as also known as the K to 12 Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. So this rationale or the justification for this implementation is actually talking about the students getting low scores, whether they reach the set standards. So this kind of assessment, which is the national achievement test, right? So the national achievement test, so the teacher should know the method in using that kind of assessment. So we all know that national achievement test is actually not done by the teachers, right? Because it is done by the specialist intertwined with the Department of Education, actually. So we also have this in an international basis. We also have this Trends International in Mathematics Study. That is also a kind of assessment. And we also have this assessment that is good for the kindergarten students, which is, I forgot the name, which is the kinder-based, I guess, the kinder-based, yeah, the school readiness yearn assessment, which is actually basing from the mother tongue that the learners or the pupils learn throughout the school year. And we also have this school-based early grade assessment. So the most familiar assessment that we know is the NCAE, which is actually pertain to the National Career Assessment Examination. So this type of assessment actually gave information towards the students that on what career they should pursue, what take, or what road they should be going at. So that is because of the INCAIB. So through that assessment, gave them it gave them the face, or it gave them the it simply gave us foreshadowing about the career or the future career that we have. So that is in the side for the student, and in the side of the teacher. So teachers should be familiar with assessment, because taking unfamiliar assessment methods creates a risk on time and resources. So, masayang tanan imong resources if you do not know what kind of assessment that is effective or that is ineffective. So, as a teacher, you should be familiar with your assessment. You should assess first the assessment itself that you are integrating, because teachers learn the strength and weaknesses of each method of assessment. So if this kind of method is not applicable towards your students, towards the group of students, if this type of assessment is weak in integrating it in the classroom situation, whether it is strong, or in the side of weak, then you as a teacher should adjust. No, you should adjust your instructional. So there must be an instructional adjustment towards the classroom situation, because how can this assessment be effective if your learners actually do not learn whatever you teach, right? So you as a teacher, you really need to know what assessment is the proper assessment, or what appropriate assessment that you are going to implement in a situation inside the classroom. So that is for familiarity with assessment. So here we have a quote coming from Nico and Brookhart in the year 2011. A rule of thumb is that simple learning targets require simple assessment. Complex learning targets demand complex assessment. That is why in the chapter 1, we really have a lot of different tests, and in chapter 2, we have a lot of formative assessment. We also have this interim assessment, because those four, or it might be there are lots of numerous assessments that we do not know, but those four assessments actually gave, or actually plays a vital and crucial role in a classroom situation, because in a complex learning, so if a classroom setting has a complex learning, then it does not require simple assessment, but it requires complex assessment. So, complex learning is directly proportional to complex assessment. Next is the time required. So, based from the textbook, the time required is, the time required. So, it may be easier said than done. But a desirable assessment is short, yet able to provide valid and reliable results. So, daghan kay mga assessment usahay nga gipanghatag atong mga maestra, pero kuan not siya sa, di man siya ingon nga trash siya, but less effective siya ba. That is why sa familiarity with the method pa lang, it plays knowing or familiarizing with your method really plays a vital role, especially this time required. Kasi, di ba, in every lesson there is a specific duration when it should be done, or when it should be taught, right? So, considering the time is a commodity that many full-time teachers do not have, it is best that assessments are quick to develop, but not to the point of reckless construction. Assessments should allow students to respond readily, but not hastily. Assessments should be scored promptly, but not without basis. So it should be noted that time is a matter of choice. It hinges on the teacher's choice of assessment method. So the given textbook here provided that a multiple test may take time to prepare, but it can be accomplished by students in a relatively short period. Why? Because they can actually perform, or they can actually accomplish that certain multiple test. It is because the teacher in the first place know what method they are going to use. That is why the students already has that conventional or formal conventional perceptions about the matter. So, moreover, the test is easily and objectively scored, especially now with the aid of optical mark readers. So, however, there is still a need to revisit the first principle. Is it appropriate for your learning targets? So this question, this type of query really is mind-blowing, knowing the fact that what if, as a future educator, what if I am using the wrong assessment? What if I am using the wrong method? So how would I expect to have a classroom that is productive? How would I expect to have a classroom that is effective for the both a teacher directed and a learner centered environment, right? So this question really gave us a thought that we really need to be vigilant in what method that we are going to internalize. So it says here that an essay may be better in some occasions as students are allowed to express their ideas with relatively few restraints. However, essays are time consuming on the part of the teacher and his or her students. But this is true. So essay questions can easily be thought of, but essays will require considerable time for students to organize their thoughts and express them in writing. Especially this type of writing, the essay writing is actually a technical writing wherein you must organize your thought, and it is really true that essay writing is time consuming. So it will also consume time, for teachers to read and mark students' responses. So essay items are good for testing small groups of students, but such advantage decreases as the class size grows. So this essay test or this essay assessment is actually better or best when it is utilized in an individual test. That is just my thought. So meanwhile, performance assessment take a lot of time in preparation, student response, and scoring, but they offer an opportunity to assess students on several learning targets. So after considering time issues, since we're tackling about time required, let us now discuss the assessment's reusability. So this assessment should and allow students readily. That said, assessment should be scored promptly but with basis too, because time is a matter of choice. That is what I've read giniha. So here, a multiple choice. Yeah, the first one is the multiple choice. It is used to measure knowledge, outcomes, and various types of learning outcomes. They are most widely used for measuring knowledge, the comprehension, application outcomes. So scoring is easy and really objective and reliable. Kasi as a student gali karon, when I am sending myself to school and having this type of test, the multiple choice, it really is subjective, and I came to think that I really need to choose the answer that really suits for that question. So there is a specific answer, no other answer than example A. So no other answer than A because it is subjective. There is this meant answer for that question. And it is really effective though in order to measure the knowledge or in order to measure the summative point of view of the student, right? So yeah. So security is an issue in a large scale. So it says here because it is based for research, high stakes testing. So nonetheless, it is also a problem in classroom testing because it affects both validity and reliability. So that is for the multiple choice. So the essay or subjective test, we have already discussed this. And the performance assessment. So, performance assessment is actually benefited for those students that are extroverted, right? Because they tend to know how to express their feelings, they know their place, they know how to interact, to socialize with a certain group. So it is also known as an alternative or authentic assessment. So it is designed to assess the ability of a student to perform correctly in a simulated situation. So this actually this performance assessment actually hone or mold our performance skills, right? Our socialization skills. So that is for performance assessment. So the last part of mine is the ease in administration. So here it says assessment should be easy to administer. So ease in administration. To avoid questions during the test or performance task, instruction must be clear and complete. So you need to be vocal. You need to make yourself audible, right, towards your students, so that there will be no repeated questions anymore after you are giving them the instructional or the educational instructions. So your assessment should be easy to administer. That is why there are based from what I've said earlier, that there are actually given assessments that are usable, no, usable in a certain situation. So we have this placement assessment, the formative assessment, we have this diagnostic assessment, and we also have this summative assessment. So I would like to further elaborate in regards to um, easy to administer, that and that assessment should be easy to administer, because according here, instructions that are vague will confuse the students and they will consequently provide incorrect responses. So there's may be a problem with the performance assessment that contain long and complicated directions and procedures. So students' efforts are futile if directions are not expressed directly and explicitly. So if assessments procedures like in science experiments are too elaborative, so reading and comprehending the procedures would consume time. So this is actually true. Easy to administer is really is crucial in integrating within ourselves as a future educator, because if you are if you are giving or if you are bestowing chaotic instruction or unorganized instruction, so do not expect nga effective ang learning. Do not expect nga organized ang performance sa mga bata, right? You do not expect that. You do not expect harmonious way. So that is why you as a teacher, or I myself as a future educator, I must be instructions are intended to be clear. Instructions are intended to be audible. Instructions are not intended to be havoc. So to further elaborate with this, easy to administer. Ganyan ako na siya further elaborate, no? Pero as per information lang, additional lang ni siya regarding since we're talking about the assessment, so insert na lang na ako about sa interim assessment, which is the pinagkaguguluhan last time. So actually, interim assessment since pwede siya magamit actually for teachers kasi assessment pansab siya. So, interim assessment actually falls for formative assessment and summative assessment depending on how you are utilizing it in a certain context. So, in the point of view of formative assessment, if interim assessment are conducted during a course or the learning period in order to provide a primary reason of learning materials towards the teachers and the students, the instructions and the learning, the teacher directed and the learner centered. So we can consider it as a formative assessment that plays interim assessment. So this type of assessment actually determines the areas where the students may be struggling at, and a guide for instructional adjustment. So that's how interim assessment plays in the field of formative assessment. So on the other hand, the summative assessment. So if interim assessment are actually I forgot. Sabi. So on the other hand, in the point of view of summative assessment, so if interim assessment is utilized to assess or evaluate the student, so I stress the term evaluate, so meaning nana sa overall performance, so meaning nana sa kinahumnan gyud sa lesson. So if an interim assessment is used to evaluate the student's performance, the overall proficiency, the overall performances, and the overall achievement of that certain students, then we can consider that as a formative assessment. So in practice, the classification between the formative assessment and the summative assessment in the field of interim assessment really varies on how you are going to utilize that interim assessment. and it really depends on the context in which it is administered. So here we also have the match A and B. Like here we have, Mom, are we going to underline it or write the letters? Mom, yes, erasures. So this actually is an example of not clear instructions, or the students did not actually comprehend what are or what is the right instructions that are bestowed by their teachers. So this actually lead to chaos. So yeah, as what I have said, instruction must be clear and complete. So instructions, yeah, I've already read that. So that is the end of my PowerPoint presentation. No, that is the end of my part. So I will be giving this video recorder to my partner, Angelic Miss Maghanay.
Okay, so good day everyone. So we'll discuss the ease of scoring. So what exactly is the ease of scoring? So it is selected response formats are the easiest to score. These are the multiple choice, the true or false, or the matching type. So no, the multiple choice, these are easy to construct and more efficient, and the true or false and the matching type. So the ease of scoring, obviously, selected response formats are the easiest compared to restricted and more so extended response essays. It is also difficult to score performance assessments like oral presentations, research papers, among others. So objectivity is really an issue in this easy scoring, no? And selected response and also, selected responses tests are marked because each item has one correct or the best answer. So we should really pick the best answer, and this contributes to the reliability of the test. So, of course, as a teacher, you will observe on being honest, no, and also performance assessments, however, makes use of rubrics, and while this facilitates scoring, care must be observed in rating to ensure objectivity. And also, Macmillan suggests that for performance assessment, it is more practical to use rating scales and checklists rather than writing extended individualized evaluations. So if we use the writing extended or individualized evaluations, it will be time consuming, and rather than the checklist or the rating scales, no, it is easy for us, no. Next is the ease of interpretation. So the ease of interpretation, so objective tests are easiest to interpret. So the objective test is they tend to be better at testing low order thinking skills such as memory, the basic comprehension, and perhaps application, and are often best used for the diagnostic assessment. So there is what they call standard, and it matching the score with the level of proficiency. So uh, so there is a rubrics is presented in the performance task. So it is uh, it is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, composed of the organization, the subject knowledge, the graphics, mechanics, eye contact, and elocu- elocution. So number one, the organization. Audience cannot understand presentation because there is no sequence of information. Number two, audience has difficulty following presentation because student jumps around. Number three, students presents information in logical sequence which audience can flow. Number four, students presents information in logical interesting sequence which audience can follow. So in the subject knowledge, Students does not have grasp of information. Students cannot answer questions about the subject. Students is uncomfortable with information and is able to answer only rudimentary questions. Student is at ease with expected answers to all questions but fails to elaborate. Number 4 demonstrates full knowledge by answering all class questions with explanations and elaborations. Next is the graphics. Students uses uh, graph super superfluous graphics or no graphics. So students occasionally uses graphics that rarely support and text and presentation. Students graphics relate to text and presentation. Students graphics explain and reinforce screen text and presentation. For the mechanics, the presentation of the students has four or more spelling errors and grammatical errors. Presentation has three misspellings and or grammatical errors. Presentation has no or more misspellings and grammatical errors. Number 4, presentation has no misspellings or grammatical errors. The eye contact. Students reads all of the report with no eye contact. Students occasionally uses eye contact but still needs most of report. These students maintains eye contact but most of the time but frequently returns to the notes. Number 4, students maintains eye contact with the audience, seldom returning to the notes. So the elo- elocution. So students mumbles, incorrectly pronounces terms and speaks too quietly for students in the black in the back of class to hear. So students' voice is low. Students incorrectly pronounces terms. Audience members have difficulty hearing presentation. Students' voice is clear. Students pronounces most words correctly. Most audience members can hear the presentation. Students uses a clear voice and correct precise pronunciation of terms so that all audience members can hear the presentation. So this is the what we call rubrics in presenting performance tasks. So next is the cost. So classroom tests are generally expensive, no? Expensive compared to the national or high stakes test. So performance tests are not that costly, the written reports and panel discussion. So hence, citing cost of a reason for being unable to come up with valid and reliable tests is simply unreasonable. So as for performance tasks, examples of tasks are not considerably costly are, as I've said, the written and oral reports, debates, and panel discussion. So of course, the students would have to pay for their use of resources like computers and copying facilities and others. So no, it is really not really mandatory, no, but they must pay, for some resources. So the use of second-hand and recyclable materials, for example, the teacher's remedy. For example of this are the laboratory experiments, dioramas, paintings, role plays with elaborate costumes, documentary films, and portfolios. Teachers may remedy this by asking students to consider using second-hand or recycled materials. So, while classroom tests may not be costly compared to some performance assessment, it is relevant to know that excessive testing may just train students on how to take tests but inadequately prepares them for a productive life as an adult. It is paramount that other methods of assessment are used in line with the learning targets. So according to Darling, Hammond, and Adamson on 2013, open-ended assessments, exams, essays, and performance tasks are more expensive to score, but they can support more ambitious teaching and learning. So, it is recommended that one chooses the most economical assessment according to Macmillan 2007. In his explanation of the economy, he said that economy should be taught in the long run and unreliable, less expensive test or any assessment that matters. It may eventually cost more in the further assessment. So, in the school level, the multiple choice tests are still popular, no? Especially in entrance tests, classroom tests, and simulated board examinations. However, high quality assessments focus on deep learning, which is essential if students are to develop the skills they need for a knowledge society. That being said, schools must support performance assessments. So, open ended assessments, exams, and performance tests are more expensive. Okay, so that's all, and thank you. Ay, pasok na tayo.
Bye, punta.
Bye
Bye!
bye!